The council chamber stretched wide like an enormous dome, filled with beings from every corner of the galaxy. Ambassador Jiho Kim stood at the center platform, his dark suit a stark contrast against the colorful aliens surrounding him. Above him, holographic displays showed burning worlds and fleeing refugees. The war against the Ravagers had reached a critical point, and the Galactic Council wanted answers from Earth. The Vrick Empress leaned forward from her crystalline throne, her insectoid body clicking with agitation, her compound eyes fixed on Jiho with unmistakable contempt. Ambassador Kim, your world has delayed long enough. We demand 50,000 human soldiers at the front lines within one standard cycle. Every species has contributed their share. Why does Earth refuse? Jiho clasped his hands behind his back, his expression calm despite the hostile atmosphere. He had prepared for this moment during the 3-month journey to Nexus Station. Your Majesty, Earth does not refuse to help. We simply approach warfare differently than the Council. We propose sending tactical advisors, strategic planners, and supply chain specialists. Our analysis shows this would be more effective than raw troop numbers. A reptilian creature rose from the lower seats, his scales gleaming bronze under the chamber lights. Chancellor Tharn of the Scaled Dominion hissed his displeasure. More effective? We lose thousands daily while you calculate probabilities. The Ravagers consume worlds, Ambassador. They do not pause for your precious analysis. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. A crystalline being, Overseer Krell, shimmered as he stood. His voice resonated like glass chimes. Perhaps humanity lacks the courage for direct combat. You hide behind your machines and your data while real warriors die. Is this not the behavior of cowards? The word hung in the air like poison. Jiho felt his jaw tighten, but maintained his diplomatic composure. Overseer Krell, I must object to that characterization. Human military history demonstrates considerable courage. However, we learned long ago that bravery without strategy leads only to graveyards full of heroes. We prefer to win wars, not merely fight them. The Empress clicked her mandibles in what might have been laughter. Pretty words, Ambassador. But words do not stop Ravager swarms. We need bodies on the ground, weapons firing, warriors willing to die for the greater good. Can humanity provide this, or are you too civilized for such barbarism? Jiho opened his mouth to respond, but a younger voice cut through the chamber. We'll send one soldier. Every head turned toward the human delegation. Minho Park, a junior diplomat barely 30 years old, stood with his fists clenched. His face flushed red, whether from anger or embarrassment, Jiho could not tell. The young man's career had just ended, but he continued speaking anyway. You want to see what humans can do? Fine, we'll send one soldier. Just one. When that single human accomplishes more than your entire battalions, maybe you'll understand why we don't throw lives away like garbage. The chamber erupted. Some aliens laughed, their sounds ranging from chirps to roars. Others hissed or buzzed their outrage. Jiho grabbed Minho's arm, trying to pull him back, but the damage was done. The challenge had been issued before the entire Galactic Council. The Vrick Empress raised a clawed appendage, and silence gradually returned. Her compound eyes gleamed with cruel amusement. A fascinating proposal, young human. One soldier against the Ravagers. Tell me, is this soldier capable of miracles? Can he multiply like your ancient stories claim? Minho's voice shook but held firm. He won't need to. One human operator, properly equipped and properly motivated, will demonstrate capabilities your species cannot comprehend. We've been fighting ourselves for thousands of years. We got very, very good at it. Chancellor Tharn stood again, his forked tongue tasting the air. A child speaks bold words. I say we accept. Let one human face the Ravagers alone. When he fails, when he dies screaming in some forgotten trench, humanity will send the soldiers we require. They will learn humility through grief. Overseer Krell shimmered in agreement. A valuable lesson for an arrogant species. Your soldier will have one standard month to prove human worth. We shall observe his efforts and his inevitable failure. Perhaps then, Ambassador Kim, your people will understand the price of civilization. Ji-ho knew he should refuse, should dismiss Minho's outburst as the words of an inexperienced diplomat. But as he looked around the chamber at the contempt and mockery on alien faces, something hardened in his chest. These beings called his people cowards. They demanded humans die by the thousands to prove their worth. Maybe it was time to show them what one motivated human could actually accomplish. Very well, Ji-ho said quietly. Earth accepts the challenge. We will send one soldier to the front lines. We choose the location, we choose the soldier, and we choose the equipment. The Council may observe as you wish. When our soldier succeeds, we expect formal apologies and a reassessment of Earth's role in this alliance. The Empress leaned back, her body language suggesting satisfaction. Agreed, Ambassador. And when your soldier fails, Earth will provide the 50,000 troops we require. We shall see if human pride survives contact with reality. The session ended shortly after. As Ji-ho and Minho walked through the station corridors back to their quarters, neither spoke. Other aliens watched them pass, some with pity, others with barely concealed glee. News of the challenge would spread through the galaxy within hours. Inside their quarters, Ji-ho finally turned to Minho. The young diplomat expected fury, possibly a formal reprimand. Instead, Ji-ho poured 2 glasses of water and handed one over. That was the most diplomatically catastrophic thing I have witnessed in 20 years of service. I know, sir. I'll submit my resignation immediately. Ji-ho shook his head slowly. In 6 hours, we will send a message to Earth. We will inform Fleet. Command that they need to find one soldier capable of fighting an entire war alone. They will think we have lost our minds. They may be correct. He paused, meeting Minho's eyes. But I am tired of being called a coward by beings who measure courage only in body counts. Minho sat down heavily. Do you think it's possible? Can one person really make a difference? Ji-ho looked out the viewport at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the Ravagers were consuming another world. Somewhere else, a human soldier was about to receive the strangest mission in military history. I suppose we are about to find out. The galaxy thinks we are soft, that our civilization has made us weak. Perhaps it is time to remind them that humans did not climb to the top of our food chain by being gentle. The message went out that night, encrypted and marked Priority Alpha. Within 48 hours, Earth's response would arrive. Within a week, one human would deploy to hell itself. The Galactic Council had issued their challenge. Humanity was about to answer. Fleet. Admiral Hai-Jin Lee stared at the message on her screen for the 3rd time. She had read it carefully, checked the authentication codes twice, and even contacted Nexus Station directly to confirm. The situation was exactly as absurd as it appeared. Some junior diplomat had challenged the entire Galactic Council, and now Earth needed to send one soldier on a suicide mission to save face. This is insane, she said to the empty office. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago, forgotten beside stacks of tactical reports. Outside her window, the lights of Seoul Defense Complex twinkled in the evening darkness. Somewhere in this massive military installation, there had to be someone crazy enough to volunteer. She activated her comm unit. Colonel Yemen, I need you in my office immediately. Bring the Psychological Warfare Division heads and Special Operations commanders. We have a situation. Within 30 minutes, her office was crowded. Colonel Yemen, a stocky man with gray temples, reviewed the mission brief with increasing disbelief. "Admiral, with respect, this is not a military operation. This is political theater designed to humiliate us. No single operator can hold ground against Ravager swarms." Dr. Sujin Han, head of xenobiology research, adjusted her glasses nervously. "The Ravagers operate in groups of thousands. They overwhelm through numbers and biological adaptation. Even our best soldiers would be consumed within days, possibly hours." Haijin leaned back in her chair. "I am aware of the odds, Doctor. However, refusing now means admitting the Council was right about us. Earth would lose credibility and likely face sanctions. We need someone who can survive long enough to make this challenge look like genuine military doctrine rather than diplomatic disaster. So we are looking for a miracle worker," Yemen said flatly. "No, Colonel. We are looking for someone who fights smart instead of hard. Someone who understands that survival is the first victory." Haijin pulled up a holographic display showing conflict zones. "We will not send this person to die. We will send them to demonstrate what one properly equipped, properly trained human operator can accomplish. We turn this insult into a recruitment advertisement for our way of warfare." The room fell silent as the implications settled in. This was not about winning battles through raw force. This was about proving that human tactical thinking could overcome numerical disadvantage. It was asymmetric warfare taken to its logical extreme. "We will need volunteers," Yemen finally said. "I will not order anyone into this." Haijin nodded. "Draft the requirements. Peak physical condition, extensive combat experience, psychological resilience, and comfort operating alone for extended periods. Mark it classified and send it through special operations channels only. Let us see who steps forward." The call went out at midnight, encrypted and restricted. The requirements were brutal. Candidates must have survived at least 3 hostile environment deployments. Demonstrate expert proficiency with alien technology. Pass psychological evaluations for isolation stress. And accept a 70% probability of death. The mission duration was listed as indefinite. Military analysts predicted perhaps a dozen responses, maybe 24 if they were lucky. By noon the next day, they had received over 2 million applications. Haijin stood in the analysis center, watching names flood the screens. Applications came from active duty soldiers, retired veterans, military contractors, and even some civilians with combat backgrounds. The sheer volume crashed their database twice. "They are all volunteers?" she asked quietly. Yemen nodded, his expression somewhere between pride and sadness. "Every single one, Admiral. They know the odds. They do not care. Someone called their species cowards, and they want to answer." The selection process took 3 weeks. Psychological teams conducted interviews. Combat specialists reviewed service records. Medical staff performed extensive health screenings. Gradually, the millions became thousands, then hundreds, then dozens. Finally, 5 candidates remained. Haijin interviewed each one personally. They were all exceptional. A Marine who had held a position alone for 6 days against colonial insurgents. A Navy pilot who had crash-landed on a hostile world and survived 3 weeks behind enemy lines. A demolitions expert who had single-handedly destroyed a pirate base from the inside. Each one was qualified. Each one was willing. The last candidate was Sergeant Doyan Choi. His file was unusual. At 32, he was slightly older than the others. His combat record showed consistent success in hostile environment operations, but it was his psychological profile that caught Haijin's attention. Every evaluator noted the same thing: unnatural calmness under extreme stress. He entered her office with quiet confidence, neither cocky nor nervous. Average height, lean build, dark eyes that seemed to notice everything. He saluted properly and waited. Sergeant Choi, Why did you volunteer for this mission? Haijin asked directly. Doyan considered the question seriously before answering. Because they think one of us is not enough, Admiral? I would like to show them they are wrong. Not with speeches or politics, but with results. If I succeed, it changes how the galaxy sees us. If I fail, at least I fail trying to prove something important. You understand this is likely a death sentence? I understand it is difficult, ma'am. But impossible is a different word. I have read the intelligence reports on Ravagers. They are dangerous, but predictable. They rely on numbers and biological aggression. They do not adapt tactics, do not use deception, do not think 3 moves ahead. I do all those things naturally. He paused. Also, someone needs to go. Might as well be me. Haijin studied him carefully. No bravado, no dramatic speeches about honor or glory. Just calm assessment and practical confidence. This was someone who understood the mission, not as suicide, but as an extremely difficult problem requiring creative solutions. The position is yours, Sergeant. You deploy in 2 weeks. Use that time to prepare, however you see fit. You will have access to any equipment, any training, any resource you require. Build your loadout like you are planning to survive. Doyan saluted again. I am planning exactly that, Admiral. Thank you for the opportunity. After he left, Yemen entered the office. You chose him. Why? The Marine had more confirmed kills. The pilot had better survival statistics. Haijin pulled up Doyan's psychological evaluation again, studying the notes. Because the others were thinking about how to fight. He is thinking about how to win. There is a difference, Colonel. A critical one. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of activity. Dr. Su Binghen's team fitted Doyan with adaptive armor that could interface with alien technology and repair itself using available materials. The suit included a sophisticated AI companion named Arya, capable of tactical analysis, language processing, and hacking alien systems. Weapons specialists provided rifles that could be fabricated from local resources, explosives that could be synthesized from common chemicals, and tools for everything from engineering to medicine. Doyan spent hours learning alien biology, studying Ravager behavior patterns, and memorizing Council species psychology. He trained in the combat simulators, ran scenarios against AI opponents, and practiced adapting to constantly changing conditions. The observers noted he rarely used the same tactic twice, always looking for unexpected approaches. On the final day, Haijin visited him in the prep bay. His equipment lay organized nearby, each piece carefully selected. Any last requests, Sergeant? Doyan looked up from checking his rifle. Just one, Admiral. When I prove this works, remember it. The Council measures strength in body counts. We measure it in mission success. They think losing 10,000 soldiers is acceptable if it achieves an objective. We think losing even one is too many if there was a smarter way. That difference is what makes us effective. Do not let them make us forget that. Haijin nodded slowly. I will remember, Sergeant. Show them what one human can do. That is the plan, Mom. The stealth corvette departed at dawn, carrying Doyan toward the war zone. Captain Taijin Yu commanded the ship, personally ensuring safe delivery to the drop point. During the 3-week journey, Doyan studied intelligence reports and planned his approach. He did not speak much, but the crew noticed he never seemed worried, only thoughtfully focused. They dropped him on Praxis 7, a recently evacuated world at the edge of Ravager territory. Council forces had abandoned the planet 3 days earlier, retreating from overwhelming numbers. Intelligence predicted the Ravagers would arrive within a weak dot at the airlock. Taijin gave a final salute. Good luck, Sergeant. Come back alive. Doyan smiled slightly as he checked his gear one last time. Luck is for games of chance, Captain. This is just work. Difficult work, but work. I will see you in a month. He stepped through the airlock, and the Corvette sealed behind him. Within minutes, the ship vanished into stealth mode, leaving Doyan alone on an empty world waiting for monsters to arrive. The galaxy was watching. Earth was holding its breath. And one human soldier was about to prove exactly what that meant. Praxis 7 was a dead world now, abandoned in panic when the Ravagers drew close. Doyan stood in the ruins of what had been a council military outpost, surrounded by equipment left behind in the hasty retreat. The aliens had fled so quickly, they had not even deleted their databases or destroyed their supplies. It was almost insulting how little they cared about operational security. "Arya, run a full scan of the facility," he said quietly, his voice activating the AI embedded in his armor. "I want to know what we have to work with." The feminine voice responded immediately, calm and precise. "Scanning now, Sergeant. Initial assessment shows 3 functional defensive turrets, 2 damaged but repairable. The base power core is intact. Multiple weapon caches, mostly Council standard issue. Also detecting abandoned vehicles and communication equipment. This facility was evacuated approximately 76 hours ago." Doyan walked through the empty corridors, his footsteps echoing. The Council had built this outpost to last, with thick walls and reinforced positions. They had simply lacked the will to defend it. He could work with this. Over the next 3 days, he transformed the ruins into something useful. Not a fortress, that would just draw attention. Instead, he created a spider's web of traps, sensors, and fallback positions. He repaired the defensive turrets and reprogrammed them, linking them to Arya for coordinated fire. He rigged collapsed sections with explosives, ready to create avalanches of debris at key moments. He mapped every tunnel, every rooftop, every line of sight in a 5-kilometer radius. When the Ravagers came, they would enter his territory without knowing it. On the 4th day, the sensors detected movement at the planetary edge. Ships, hundreds of them, dropping through the atmosphere like metallic rain. The Ravagers had arrived. "Initial count shows 300 organisms in the advance force," Arya reported. "Biological analysis matches standard Ravager scout types. Insectoid crustacean hybrids, heavy natural armor, acid-based projectile weapons. They are establishing a pheromone trail network." Doyan watched from a concealed position as the creatures spread across the landscape. They moved in disturbing waves, their movements coordinated but mindless, like ants following invisible paths. Each Ravager stood roughly 2 meters tall, with multiple limbs ending in blade-like claws. Their carapaces gleamed a sickly green under the planet's pale sun. "They are following chemical trails," he observed. "Arya, can you synthesize counterpheromones?" "Affirmative. Analyzing their chemical structure now. I can produce disruption compounds within 2 hours using materials from the medical supplies." Doyan smiled slightly. "Do it. Let us teach them that following their noses gets them killed." He spent the next hours preparing while Arya worked on the chemical compounds. The Ravagers were methodical, sending scout pairs to investigate every structure, every potential hiding place. They moved in predictable patterns, always leaving pheromone markers for the others to follow. It was efficient for overwhelming weak resistance. Against a thinking opponent, it was a critical vulnerability. When Arya finished the synthesis, Doyan moved to a position overlooking one of the main Ravager approach routes. He deployed the chemical dispersers along their trail, letting the compounds spread invisibly. Then he waited. 20 minutes later, a Ravager scout pair following the trail suddenly veered off course, their antennae twitching in confusion. The false pheromones led them directly into a minefield of reprogrammed Council drones. The explosion was sudden and absolute. Both Ravagers disappeared in a flash of plasma fire, their carapaces unable to withstand the concentrated blast. The other Ravagers reacted immediately, rushing toward the explosion site. But they followed the compromised pheromone trail, and Doyan had prepared for that too. Secondary charges detonated, catching a dozen more in the kill zone. The survivors scattered, their coordination broken. Enemy casualties, 14, Arya reported. Remaining forces are exhibiting confusion in their movement patterns. Doyan did not celebrate. This was just the opening move. He relocated immediately, knowing the Ravagers would investigate in force. He was right. Within an hour, a large group converged on his previous position, searching for the attacker. They found nothing but empty ruins and dead comrades. Over the next week, Doyan waged a ghost war. He never engaged directly when he could avoid it. Instead, he used the environment, the abandoned technology, and the Ravagers' own instincts against them. He collapsed buildings on top of patrols. He hacked their captured communication devices to send false signals. He picked off isolated individuals with precision rifle fire from impossible ranges, then disappeared before reinforcements arrived. The Council observation satellites watched everything from orbit. In the Nexus Station Command Center, military officers from a dozen species studied the footage in growing disbelief. The Ravagers were dying, not in dramatic battles, but in a series of seemingly random disasters. Buildings collapsed at exactly the wrong moment. Pheromone trails led into death traps. Scouts vanished without a trace. He is not fighting them. Commander Sila, an avian strategist, observed. He is making the environment fight them. Every advantage they have, numbers, coordination, biological weapons, becomes irrelevant when they cannot locate their enemy. Overseer Krell shimmered with irritation. This is cowardice, not strategy. He hides and strikes from shadows. Where is the honor in such tactics? Sela turned her bright eyes on the crystalline being. Honor does not win wars, Overseer. Results do. In 11 days, this single human has eliminated 127 Ravagers without sustaining injury. Our best battalion lost 2,000 soldiers to achieve similar casualty ratios. Perhaps we should be learning instead of criticizing. The debate continued, but the numbers spoke clearly. Dayan's kill count rose steadily, while his supply consumption remained minimal. He was not burning through ammunition in desperate firefights. He was hunting efficiently, each shot carefully planned, each trap precisely placed. On day 14, Doyan decided to send a message. He hacked into the Council observation network, a task that took Arya less than an hour, given their terrible security protocols. His face appeared on screens throughout Nexus Station, dirty but calm, showing no signs of stress or fear. Day 14, he said simply. Ravager casualties, 473. Human casualties, 0. Ammunition remaining, 60%. Morale, excellent. Tell the Council I am just getting started. He cut the transmission before they could respond. In his concealed position, he cleaned his rifle methodically while Arya monitored the Ravager response. They would send more forces now, probably significantly more. That was fine. He had been preparing for escalation. Arya, how are the underground tunnel preparations coming? 70% complete. The industrial sector will be ready as a fallback position within 48 hours. I have also located several Ravager resource caches we can target. Doyan nodded, his mind already planning 3 moves ahead. The Ravagers thought in terms of overwhelming force. They would send larger numbers, expecting to saturate his defenses. Instead, they would find he had already moved to terrain better suited for extended operations. Let them chase his ghost through the ruins. Every step would cost them dot in the council chamber. Ambassador Jiho watched the transmission recording for the 3rd time. Minho stood beside him, hardly believing what they were witnessing. One human soldier was not just surviving, he was thriving. The mockery from the other species had quieted considerably. "He is actually doing it," Minot said quietly. "One person is making a difference." Jiho allowed himself a small smile. "He is doing more than that. He is changing how they see us. Every day he survives, every ravager that falls, it rewrites their assumptions. They thought we were soft because we valued efficiency over sacrifice. Now they are learning that efficiency kills just as effectively as brute force. Perhaps more so." The Vrick Empress convened an emergency session the next day. The topic was not whether to withdraw the challenge. They had too much pride for that. Instead, they debated increasing the difficulty. Some suggested deploying a brood commander, an intelligent alpha ravager capable of coordinating sophisticated attacks. Others wanted to limit the observation period. Claiming the human had proven nothing yet. In the end, they decided to let events proceed naturally. The ravagers would escalate on their own, sending heavier forces as they recognized the threat. If the human survived that, then perhaps Earth had earned genuine respect. If he fell, well, the challenge would still conclude as expected, merely delayed. On Praxis 7, Doyon prepared for the coming storm. He had drawn blood, proven the concept. Now came the real test. The ravagers would send their best, their smartest, their most dangerous organisms. He would need every advantage, every trick, every ounce of training to survive what came next. But as he checked his equipment and reviewed his plans, Doyon felt no fear. Only focus. Only purpose. He had volunteered to prove what one human could accomplish. The galaxy was watching. He intended to give them a lesson they would never forget. The war was just beginning. The arrival of the brood commander changed everything. Doyon first noticed the difference on day 16, when the ravager behavior patterns shifted dramatically. The mindless swarms that had been so predictable suddenly moved with purpose and coordination. They stopped following compromised pheromone trails. They avoided obvious trap locations. They began systematic grid searches instead of random wandering. "Arya, analyze the tactical change," Doyon said from his position in the industrial sector tunnels. He had relocated underground 2 days earlier, sensing the escalation coming. "Pattern analysis suggests a command organism has arrived," Arya responded. "Ravager groups are now operating with strategic coordination. They are learning from previous encounters and adapting tactics. This represents a significant threat increase." Through his scope, Doyon watched a Ravager patrol move past one of his trap positions without triggering it. They had somehow detected the danger and avoided it. Deliberately. Smart. That meant the brood commander was not just coordinating movements, but processing information and teaching the swarm. He pulled back, deeper into the tunnel network, his mind racing. His advantage had always been intelligence versus instinct. If the Ravagers now had intelligence too, the equation changed. He needed new approaches, better tactics, and most importantly, he needed to eliminate that commander before it learned too much about human warfare. Over the next 3 days, the situation deteriorated. The brood commander brought 2,000 additional Ravagers and deployed them with disturbing efficiency. They cut off his supply caches, collapsed his escape routes, and began systematic sweeps of the underground sectors. For the first time since arriving on Praxis 7, Doyon was truly on the defensive. Supply status critical. Arya reported during one tense evening. "We have lost access to 70% of our cached resources. Ammunition at 40%. Medical supplies at 30%. The enemy is specifically targeting our logistics." Doyon sat in the darkness of a maintenance tunnel, eating a ration bar and thinking. The commander understood human warfare depended on supply chains. It was trying to starve him out, force him into the open where numbers would overwhelm individual skill. clever, almost clever enough to work. Arya, switch focus to infrastructure targets. If they want to play logistics warfare, we will burn their supply lines too. Start mapping their resource nodes and breeding chambers. Adjusting tactical priorities. However, Sergeant, direct attacks on their infrastructure will expose our position. I know, but defense alone means slow death. We need to hurt them badly enough that the commander makes mistakes. Aggressive action is the only path to survival now. He began a new campaign, more dangerous than anything before. Instead of avoiding contact, he actively sought out Ravager support structures. He found a breeding chamber in the ruins of a council habitat complex and destroyed it with carefully placed explosives, killing hundreds of larvae. He sabotaged their resource collection points, poisoning the organic matter they used for sustenance. He even managed to hijack one of their biomechanical communication nodes, feeding false intelligence into their network. Each action was risky. Each time, Ravager patrols came closer to finding him. On day 23, they nearly succeeded. Doyan was escaping from a sabotage operation when a Ravager pack cut off his retreat. He fought them in close quarters for the first time, his rifle barking in the confined space of a collapsed subway tunnel. He killed 6 before breaking through, but not before a Ravager claw opened a gash across his shoulder. He made it back to his current hideout and collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. The wound was not deep, but it bled freely, staining his armor dark. Arya's medical systems kicked in immediately, spraying sealant and administering painkillers. First injury in 23 days, he muttered, wincing. The commander is better than I thought. Recommend immediate evacuation, Arya suggested. Your survival probability decreases significantly with reduced mobility. No, not yet. I am close to something. Arya, pull up all footage of Ravager command organisms. I need to understand how the commander thinks. He spent hours reviewing intelligence while his shoulder knitted itself back together. The brood commander was larger than standard Ravagers, with enhanced cranial structures suggesting greater intelligence. It never engaged directly, always staying behind the front lines, protected by elite guard organisms. Most importantly, it established command posts in secure locations to coordinate the swarm. Arya, where is the commander's current location? Central position in the old manufacturing district, approximately 3 kilometers northeast. Heavy guard presence, estimated 200 organisms within immediate defensive perimeter. Doyan studied the maps carefully. The manufacturing district was a maze of collapsed factories and industrial equipment. Difficult to navigate, easy to get trapped. The commander had chosen its position well. Any direct assault would be suicide, which meant direct assault was exactly what no one would expect. Over the next week, Doyan prepared the most complex operation of his deployment. He spent days rigging the entire manufacturing district with improvised explosives, using industrial chemicals and salvaged council munitions. He planted false trails, suggesting his hideout was in a completely different sector, drawing patrols away. He even captured several Ravager corpses and positioned them to create fake attack patterns. This plan has a 38% success probability, Arya noted. Those are not favorable odds. Favorable odds would be staying here and slowly running out of supplies. This gives us a chance. Sometimes that is enough. He checked his rifle one final time. Besides, optimal was never the goal. Winning was. The operation began at dawn on day 30. Doyan infiltrated the manufacturing district using underground maintenance tunnels the Ravagers had not fully explored. He moved slowly, avoiding patrols, his armor's camouflage system working overtime. It took 6 hours to reach the position he needed, a structural support nexus deep in the factory complex. Through his scope, he finally saw the brood commander. It was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with a grotesque intelligence visible in its multiple eyes. It stood surrounded by its guards, processing information from scout reports. This was the mind behind the swarm, the reason the Ravagers had become so dangerous. Doyan settled into position, controlling his breathing. He had one shot at this. If he missed, if the charges failed, he would be trapped in the heart of enemy territory, with no escape route. But if he succeeded, he would decapitate the entire operation. He aimed carefully, not at the commander, but at a specific structural weakness Arya had identified. One shot, perfectly placed, would trigger a cascade reaction in the rigged supports. He exhaled slowly, letting his heartbeat steady, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked once. The bullet struck home. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire factory complex groaned like a dying giant. Explosives detonated in sequence, each one timed to maximize structural collapse. Support columns failed. Floors pancaked downward. 3 city blocks of industrial infrastructure came crashing down in a thunderous avalanche of metal and concrete. Doyan was already running, racing through the tunnels as the world shook apart above him. Debris rained down. Walls cracked. Dust filled the air until he could barely see. He ran on instinct and Arya's guidance, taking turns at full sprint, diving through collapsing passages seconds before they sealed shut. He emerged from an auxiliary tunnel a kilometer away, just as the final sections collapsed. Behind him, the manufacturing district was simply gone, replaced by a smoking crater of rubble. 2,000 Ravagers had been inside that kill zone. Maybe half escaped. The Brood commander definitely had not. Doyan collapsed to his knees, coughing dust from his lungs. His shoulders screamed in pain from the exertion. His armor was cracked in 3 places. But he was alive, and the Ravagers were broken. Enemy command organism confirmed eliminated, Arya reported. Remaining Ravager forces are exhibiting chaos patterns. They have lost strategic coordination. Over the next 2 days, the surviving Ravagers fell apart. Without the commander's intelligence, they reverted to mindless aggression and poor tactics. They attacked randomly, fell into obvious traps, and eventually began fleeing the planet entirely. Doyan hunted the remnants methodically, not giving them time to regroup or adapt. On day 34, the last Ravager transport lifted off from Praxis 7. The planet was quiet for the first time in weeks. Doyan stood in the ruins, exhausted but victorious. His armor was battered, his supplies nearly exhausted, and his body pushed to its absolute limit. But he had survived. More than survived. He had won. The Council observation satellites captured everything. The footage spread through Nexus Station like wildfire. One human soldier had defended an entire planet against thousands of Ravagers. He had adapted, innovated, and ultimately triumphed through intelligence and determination. In the council chamber, even Overseer Krell was silent. The avian commander Scylla simply played the footage of the final explosion on repeat, her expression thoughtful. "This," she said quietly, "is what warfare looks like when you refuse to sacrifice intelligence for numbers." Ambassador Jiho received the news in his quarters. Minho burst in with the report, nearly speechless with relief and pride. He did it. Doyan actually did it. Jiho allowed himself a smile, genuine and wide. He did more than that. He changed their minds. Now comes the hard part. We must ensure they learn the right lessons from this. On Praxis 7, Doyan treated his wounds and waited for extraction. Arya ran final diagnostics while he sat in the ruins, watching the sun set on a dead world he had defended alone. "Ready to go home, Sergeant?" Arya asked. Doyan nodded slowly. "Ready to finish what we started." The challenge was survival. We survived. Now we prove it meant something. The stealth corvette arrived 12 hours later. Captain Taijin greeted him at the airlock with a salute and a smile. "Welcome back, Sergeant. The galaxy has been watching. You have become somewhat famous. Famous is not the goal, Captain. Changing their minds is. Let us go make sure they understand what they saw." The journey back to Nexus Station began. Behind them, Praxis 7 lay silent, a monument to what one human could accomplish when underestimated. Ahead lay the reckoning. The stealth corvette approached. Nexus Station 2 months after Doyon had departed as an unknown sergeant on a suicide mission. He returned as something else entirely. News of his victory had spread through Council space like a shockwave, analyzed and debated by military strategists from every species. Some called it luck. Others called it genius. Everyone agreed should have been impossible. Captain Taijin guided the ship through the docking procedures while Doyon stood at the observation port, watching the massive station grow larger. He wore his dress uniform now, the combat armor carefully packed away. New medals decorated his chest, awarded by 3 separate human governments. His shoulder still ached where the Ravager had wounded him, a reminder that victory had been far from certain. "You are a hero now," Taijin said, joining him at the viewport. "They are calling you the ghost of Praxis 7. There are documentary proposals, book deals, interview requests from 40 species. How does it feel?" Doyon shrugged slightly. "Like a distraction from the real work. I did not go there to become famous, Captain. I went to prove a point. Now I need to make sure they actually learn the lesson. Which is that humans do not measure strength the way they do. We never did. We never will." The docking clamps engaged with a metallic thud. Beyond the airlock, Doyon could see a reception committee waiting. Ambassador Jiho stood at the front, flanked by military officers from multiple species. Even from this distance, Doyon could see the mixture of respect and curiosity on their alien faces. He took a deep breath and stepped through the airlock. The moment his boots touched the station deck, the assembled officers saluted in unison. It was strange seeing reptilian warriors, insectoid soldiers, and crystalline beings all showing respect to a single human sergeant. 2 months ago, they had called his entire species cowards. Jiho stepped forward, extending his hand. "Welcome back, Lieutenant Choi. Yes, you have been promoted. Several times, actually. Congratulations on your impossible victory." Doyon shook his hand firmly. "Thank you, Ambassador. Though I should mention, it was only impossible if you assumed I was fighting their war using their methods. I fought it my way. That made all the difference." The formal reception lasted an hour, full of speeches and ceremonies that Doyon tolerated with patient grace. But he could see the real purpose in Ambassador Jiho's eyes. This display was political theater, establishing human credibility before the harder conversation began. Finally, Jiho led him to a private conference room where the real work would start. Inside, Admiral Haijin Li waited along with several council representatives. Overseer Krell shimmered in one corner, his crystalline form as unreadable as ever. Commander Sella perched on a specialized seat, her avian eyes bright with interest. Notably absent was any representative from the Scaled Dominion. Chancellor Tharn and his delegation had not been invited. "Lieutenant Choi," Haijin said formally, "please present your operational findings to the Council." Doyon activated a holographic display, pulling up data Arya had compiled during the mission. "During my 34 days on Praxis 7, I engaged Ravager forces totaling approximately 3,000 organisms. Final enemy casualties exceeded 2,000. Human casualties remained at 0. However, the tactical successes are not the most important discovery I made." He pulled up genetic analysis data. "While sabotaging Ravager breeding chambers, I collected biological samples. Arya performed detailed analysis. The results are disturbing. These Ravagers were not naturally evolved organisms. They were engineered, enhanced, modified with technology and genetic markers that match Council species. The room fell silent. Sela leaned forward, her feathers ruffling. Explain. The Ravagers carry genetic modifications consistent with scaled Dominion bioweapon research. Someone has been breeding these creatures and releasing them in frontier territories. The war is not a natural invasion. It is manufactured. Doyan displayed the evidence systematically. Genetic markers, technology fragments found in Ravager hives. Even financial records Arya had pulled from compromised Council databases. The trail led directly to Chancellor Tharn and several high-ranking reptilian military officers. They had been engineering Ravagers for years, releasing them on frontier worlds, then profiting from selling weapons to desperate colonies. This is why they demanded massive troop deployments, Doyan continued. Not because numbers were necessary, but because they wanted to prolong the conflict. Every dead soldier meant more weapon sales, more political power, more territorial claims when worlds were abandoned. The war was never about survival. It was about profit. Overseer Krell finally spoke, his voice resonating with barely controlled anger. These are serious accusations, Lieutenant. Do you have proof beyond genetic samples? Arya, transmit the financial records. The AI complied, flooding the displays with transaction histories, encrypted communications, and shipping manifests. The evidence was overwhelming. Tharn had not just created the Ravagers, he had been controlling where they attacked, ensuring maximum chaos and profit. Sela stood abruptly. I am calling for immediate council session. This cannot wait. If these allegations are true, we have been manipulated into sacrificing our people for scaled Dominion profit. The emergency council session convened within hours. The chamber packed with representatives from every species, all demanding answers. Doyan stood at the central platform where Ambassador Jiho had stood months earlier when the accusations of cowardice began. The irony was not lost on him. He presented the evidence methodically, letting the facts speak for themselves. When he finished, the chamber erupted in chaos. Species that had lost thousands of soldiers to the Ravagers demanded justice. The Vrick Empress, who had called humans cowards, now called for Tharn's arrest. Even former allies of the Scaled Dominion turned against them in fury. Chancellor Tharn tried to defend himself, claiming the evidence was fabricated, that humans had manufactured a conspiracy to avoid their military obligations. But no one believed him. The genetic markers were too specific, the financial records too detailed. His denials sounded hollow against the mountain of proof. Security forces arrested Tharn and 17 co-conspirators before the session ended. The Scaled Dominion government collapsed within days as the scandal spread. Reform movements swept through council space, demanding accountability and transparency. The easy acceptance of endless casualties, of throwing bodies at problems, suddenly seemed not just wasteful, but criminally negligent. 2 weeks later, the Council formally requested Earth join as a full military partner, not as infantry providers, but as strategic advisors. They wanted human military doctrine taught in Council academies, human tactical thinking integrated into combined operations. They wanted to learn how to win wars efficiently, instead of just surviving them through attrition. Admiral Haijin Li accepted on behalf of humanity, but with conditions. We will teach you our methods, but understand they require cultural change. You must value individual soldiers as irreplaceable assets, not expendable resources. You must invest in training and equipment, not just recruitment and replacement. You must accept that sometimes one expert is worth more than 1,000 amateurs. Can your species embrace this? The Council agreed. The transformation began slowly but spread quickly. Small units of human special operators deployed alongside alien forces, teaching reconnaissance techniques, asymmetric warfare, and adaptive combat strategies. Military academies began emphasizing tactical thinking over simple aggression. Casualty rates dropped dramatically as forces learned to fight smarter instead of harder. 6 months after returning from Praxis 7, Doyan stood in front of his first class at the Solar Defense Academy. The room held 40 cadets, 20 human, 20 from various council species. They watched him with varying degrees of curiosity and respect. "They used to ask how many soldiers it takes to win a war," he began, his voice carrying clearly through the classroom. 10,000? 100,000? A million? These questions miss the point entirely. The real question is not how many soldiers, but what kind of soldiers. Strength is not about numbers. It is about will, creativity, and the refusal to accept defeat. It is about thinking 3 moves ahead of your enemy. It is about making every action count for something. A young insectoid cadet raised a clawed appendage. "But Lieutenant Choi, you had advantages. Advanced equipment, AI support, human unpredictability. How can we replicate such advantages?" Doyan smiled slightly. "You are asking the wrong question. I had advantages, yes, but so did the Ravagers. They had numbers, biological weapons, home territory advantage. Every combatant has advantages and disadvantages. The key is not having better advantages, but using what you have more effectively than your opponent uses what they have. That is what I will teach you. How to maximize your strengths while minimizing theirs. How to think like a human soldier thinks." The class ran for 3 hours. Dayun walked them through tactical scenarios, emphasizing creativity and adaptation. He showed footage from Praxis 7, not the dramatic explosions, but the quiet moments of preparation, the careful planning, the patient observation. War was not just about fighting. It was about thinking. After class, an avian cadet approached him hesitantly. "Lieutenant, may I ask a personal question?" "Of course." "When you were alone on Praxis 7, facing thousands of enemies, were you ever afraid?" Doyan considered the question seriously. "Every single day. Fear is natural. Fear keeps you sharp, makes you careful. The difference is not being fearless. The difference is not letting fear control your decisions. I was afraid I would die. I was afraid I would fail. But I was more afraid of not trying my absolute best. So I used the fear as fuel instead of letting it paralyze me. That is what courage actually means." The cadet clicked her beak thoughtfully and returned to her seat. Doyan watched his students file out, already discussing tactics and strategies. These young warriors would be different from their predecessors. They would think before charging. They would plan before shooting. They would win through intelligence instead of just bravery. On Praxis 7, the ruins still stood as testament to what had happened there. The council had declared it a memorial site, forbidden from development. A monument rose in the manufacturing district where the Brood commander fell, built from the very rubble that had buried it. The plaque was written in dozens of languages. Readable by every species in council space, it read, "Here, one soldier proved that courage is not the absence of fear, but the will to stand alone when others will not. In memory of the Battle of Praxis 7 and the human who changed a galaxy's understanding of strength." Below that, someone had added in smaller text, likely without official permission, "You called us cowards. We sent one. That was enough." Dayan visited the monument once, brought there by Ambassador Jiho during a diplomatic tour. He stood before the plaque silently, remembering the fear, the exhaustion, the desperate calculations. He remembered collapsing in the tunnels, wounded and alone. He remembered the moment he realized he might actually survive. "Do you regret it?" Jiho asked quietly. "Volunteering for something that nearly killed you?" Doyan shook his head slowly. "No, Someone needed to answer their challenge. Someone needed to show them we are not what they assumed. If not me, then someone else would have gone. I am glad it was me. I proved what needed proving. And what was that? That humans win wars not by being the strongest or the fastest or the most numerous. We win by